Hey everyone, this is Luis from Side Effects, and in this video I'm going to talk about the Rhizome UV bridge that we just added to the game development toolset and Side Effects Labs. Rhizome UVs, if you guys haven't heard, is an awesome software for generating UVs. In this bridge we have 4 different nodes, so if we type Rhizome, there's an optimize, a processor, rectangularize, and unwrap. Unwrap is the main one that does the auto seaming and the flattening. Rectangularize basically takes quadded UVs and basically turns them into rectangles, which is super useful. Optimize is kind of like a relax operation that Rhizome does really well, and it comes super handy as a standalone node. And then the processor is the kind of underlying engine, similar to the Gaia integration, where you can basically send commands to Rhizome through it. All of the other 3 nodes use the processor internally, but we figured we can expose the processor by itself as well, in case you want to do something custom. So let's just start with the pig head and then just do unwrap. So if we hook it up, and it doesn't have auto cook just because it takes a little bit. So I'm going to kick off the cook. It's going to basically call Rhizome, send the mesh, do the work, and then bringing it in. Here you can see that I already worked, and you can see it's pretty incredible to where this is the default UVs, and this is the one that it generated. And it did the whole thing with a single seam. So it turns it all into a single island. So if we do a visualize UV node, just to see how much distortion we're getting, and it's actually pretty good considering it's a single seam. If we visualize the seams, we can kind of see which area it chose to cut. So you can see it's a pretty minimal seam, and all of this area is kind of, it's a single chunk, and it does a great job at flattening that out as well. So if this is a little too much distortion for you, there's also lots of different controls. First, there's multiple ways of defining that seam. Pelt is the one that I like the most. And then there's a bunch of advanced controls to basically limit the stretching and different things. You can check the Rhizome documentation for these. They're basically one-to-one from the internal program. The one I use the most is the stretch control. So if I crank that up a little bit to maybe 0.3 and then run it again, we'll see. If I hop over to my UV channels, you'll see that it split up the islands. Basically, wherever the threshold became a little bit too sharp, it chunked it up. So now you can see the seams kind of go through here. And then basically what you expect where we were getting bed problems. So if I change, maybe visualize it this way, it's a little bit better. So now we basically almost have no distortion or very minimal. And it's really incredible for auto UV. Super happy to have this integrated into Houdini. The other node, so let's just do the rectangularize. It's fairly simple. We need to make a group first to feed it. So if we select basically these groups of islands and then do group, now it's going to be group 1. Then we can feed it into the rectangularize and then choose group 1. And you can see it does the job. If we change this to vertical and then cook it, you'll see it'll take a little bit, and it's vertical. So after here, because they're just regular UVs, we can run UV layout and repack it so everything is in the right place. And then I also wanted to show the optimize. So to show the optimize, I actually have a different model here. I have my favorite crab that I use quite often. And here I just reduced it and kind of cleaned it up a little bit. So it's something that's a little bit more useful. Let's drop unwrap. And just with default settings, let's cook it. And what you're going to see, it's going to do, again, a really good job at generating the seams. And a single seam on an object this complex. But you can see there's a lot of areas where it crunches it up a lot, where all the legs basically get pushed into this little corners. If we see the UVs themselves, you can see there's a little bit of a stretch going on, and then there's a lot of resolution here, which is the big area. So it's not perfect, but we can get pretty close to perfect with the optimizing options. The other option that we can see here is if we go to display UV distortion on the UV area, and that'll actually show it up in the 3D view as well, which is a cool trick. So if we do now the optimize, and here we can crank up the number of iterations. Let's do 10. just so it spins a little bit. And we do cook. And you can see, even though it is kind of going across to a different software and taking a little bit to cook, it's nothing awful, nothing that you can't work with. And now we come back and you can see automatically the distortion went way down to where only the little spikes are showing distortion. And this is what the UV looks like, which is pretty incredible. So it goes from this, which you can see it's not ideal, but pretty good seam generation, pretty incredible seam generation. And then this is the optimized version of it. And it does a really good job of kind of not having it overlap on top of each other, and while maintaining the same original seam. So if we just want to drop a UV layout over here to do the packing, and there you go. Now you have a pretty good UV, pretty minimal distortion. If we go and look at our grid, it's pretty incredible that we can UV a character this complicated this easily with this kind of clean UVs. And then finally, just for completeness sakes, if we look at the Rhizome processor, this was actually generated by Oliver Holtz from Origami Digital, and he's given it over to us to kind of take over and shepherd. He did a really good job of basically setting this up to where there's some presets, some of the unwrapping. So here, basically you can pick a bunch of different defaults that you can copy and paste from the Rhizome console log, and then just plop that down here and have it run the work that you do. And there's also some cool features, like you can not quit, so you can actually launch Rhizome and then keep it open if you want to modify and do some kind of manual work and just use it as a bridge that just send data over. You can use the processor to also do that work. So that's pretty much it for the bridge. We're super stoked to have it as part of the labs and the game dev toolsets. Do check it out. It's a great piece of software and it does a fantastic job with UVs. Thanks for watching, and let me know if you have any questions.